Hi guys, my name is Veer. Thanks for taking the time out to attend this webinar. I'll be your host for today. This webinar is for the people who monitor MySQL and MariaDB databases in the AWS cloud and are looking for tools to monitor their database performance. Before we begin with the webinar, there are a few things we would like to notify you. You can type in the questions at any point of time during the course of this webinar. We will respond to each and every question at the end of this webinar during the Q&A session. Now let me introduce Sri Nair, Product Manager at Webio, who will walk you through the webinar. Sri, over to you.
Thank you, Veer, for the introduction, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join us for this session. So in this webinar, we would be definitely giving you a lot of value add in terms of the monitoring aspect is concerned for RDS. So the whole topic of this webinar is to go above and beyond the raw logs that you get from RDS to make sure that you have a complete solution for monitoring RDS. So this is how I have thought to structure the webinar for today. First, I would be giving you some insights as to when do you really should move to RDS. I've kind of included a few tips in terms of the scaling and load balancing of RDS instances as a bonus to this particular webinar. It wasn't originally intended to be in this webinar, but I thought that it would be a great value add for people who are looking to move to RDS or are currently on RDS. Second, I would be talking about the limitations of CloudWatch. Is one of the tools which is widely used by a lot of DevOps who use RDS because it comes as a natural adaptation to use this tool because it's part of the AWS cloud offering. Third, I would be walking you through the benefits of monitoring beyond raw logs, which basically means that the real monitoring happens after you get your hands on the raw logs for RDS. Of course, I would be giving a comprehensive product comparison of the RDS monitoring solutions which are available right there in the market, because there comes a time where you need a good complete monitoring solution for RDS, as you cannot achieve everything that you need in terms of monitoring with the AWS tools which are available in the cloud. Lastly, I would be demonstrating the ease of monitoring RDS and the different aspects of it using our tool, which would definitely be followed by a Q&A session where I would be happy to answer any questions that you would have. So when do you really move to RDS? Amazon Relational Database Service is a hosted database service in the AWS cloud. If your organization's data is stored in one of the popular database systems, but on a company server, or perhaps you are renting a dedicated server, you might want to consider switching to Amazon RDS. Of course, with Amazon RDS, you can choose from several relational database systems like MySQL, Oracle, MariaDB, Postgres, SQL Server, and as well as Amazon Aurora. Postgres has been typically a hot topic of discussion with RDS, so you might want to look at it if you are anyway using Postgres. There are many advantages to Amazon RDS, such as server scaling and load balancing of user traffic. Best of all, it can reduce the operational cost of running database software like MySQL. Of course, with the Amazon RDS, you do not need to worry about performing security updates or patching the operating system or tuning the database itself. In fact, some of the patches Amazon deploys for MySQL and MariaDB are specifically designed to get better performance in a cloud setting. So you do not have to worry about a lot of things. Now moving on to the bonus part of this webinar, which I wanted to share with you guys, which is definitely about scaling and load balancing. First thing about scaling and load balancing is that it can be intimidating. scaling a system's capacity seems like it should be easy, but let me tell you that it can be intimidating. Adding faster and more powerful servers to an infrastructure will typically address the scaling needs, as well as additional storage and other such things. With Amazon, you can achieve this by resizing an instance, of course, although you will have to endure some downtime while doing this, which is undesirable. It's much easier than physical adding servers on site. That's why it's kind of preferable, but downside is the trade-off that you would have to do here. So with Amazon RDS, it's just a matter of a few clicks to expand your server, so you don't have to be really worried about a lot of things. It's just a lot of effort and a lot of time consumed in doing that activity. Do not expand though in preparation for a surge in traffic that may not happen or might happen for a short period of time. More hardware, even virtual hardware, comes with a price. So you have to stay lean when you do expand your systems for temporary surges. Be sure that you contract yourself when it's no longer needed. Better query construction and better schema, better table schema can also contribute a lot towards scaling and load balancing. When writes and read queries are running too slow, these are several things you can do to improve your performance, and better query construction and better table schema is one of them. Large or even wide tables can be broken into smaller or more manageable tables to improve performance. When huge tables can't be reduced, you can try using partitioning. This can work as well. Quickly moving on to the last bit of tip that I have for you is the database sharding. So with Amazon RDS, you also have the option to shard data. So sharding is a configuration in which data is stored on more than one instance. So this can greatly improve performance for large databases with plenty of traffic. Also, it can be a more reliable and more permanent solution. Basically, you can split data by rows or by tables. If you are planning to do this, you may want to use a storage or a special storage engine such as Spider, which has been designed for sharding. You will also have to make adjustments to your application for handling writes. Handling it in a better way for it to know when to include the other tables as well. So this can be quite involved, but the server logistics part is easy with Amazon RDS, so it should not be a lot of problem. Another advantage of Amazon RDS is that it allows you to outsource operational aspects of managing a MySQL database. Organizations that appreciate this aspect tend to have many developers, but do not have specific or dedicated database administrators. You could hire a full-time DBA whose primary duty is to monitor and adjust your databases based on your specific needs and changing factors, although this can be a very costly affair and isn't always necessary. Some organizations do this because they find the administering of databases to be complicated. But what we believe is monitoring and tuning your databases should be easy and cost effective. That's where we provide a whole complete solution to make sure that you do not have to pay a lot of consultation hour money to big companies where you could actually learn and do these things by yourself in-house. Moving on to the limitations of CloudWatch, which pushes you towards the boundary of hiring a full-time DBA. Amazon CloudWatch is a monitoring service for AWS resources and the applications that you run on AWS. You can use Amazon CloudWatch to collect and track metrics, collect and monitor log files, set alarms, and automatically react to changes in your AWS resources and so on. There are a lot of benefits, but CloudWatch primarily monitors the cloud resources and a set of limited database metrics like error logs, low query log, general query log, etc. But CloudWatch primarily would do good metric-based monitoring, which will always return good insights so that you can take immediate actions. Talking about the number one limitation, like which I just spoke about, is the a metric-based monitoring, which is not a holistic approach towards monitoring, and I will show you and explain you later how and why metric-based monitoring is not sufficient. There are no advisors that would help you monitor and take action on the issues that you would find, which is a major setback. It doesn't really provide any insights, but just raw data or logs, which is again a massive limitation. It's almost impossible to identify problem SQL, because if you have to figure out the performance issues, it's important for you to understand the problem SQL and take immediate actions on it, because there could be problems which are long standing, like it could be there for weeks or months, and you have not gotten your hands onto it because the inherent tools that you get on the cloud are not capable of doing that. So that's where we get this opportunity to start monitoring beyond the raw logs that you get from CloudWatch. Despite the many interfaces and the features related to Amazon RDS, it does not provide any advisors to help you monitor and take action on issues that might find with your databases. Nor does it provide any insights. There is just raw data and logs. Of course, it can collect information on slow queries and general queries that I was talking about earlier. It can also identify security breaches and a whole bunch of other things that would interest a DBA. But putting it all together and making sense of it to be able to act appropriately and in timely manner, it requires either a good expertise or a good experienced DBA or the right set of tools. Even if you have a dedicated DBA, he will still require the right tools. Otherwise, he will be stressed and probably miss problems and trends as to give you an opportunity to hire additional DBAs. This is where monitoring tools can help your staff operate efficiently and keep your staff to a bare minimum, so that you operate on low cost and you make profits, because the whole point of business is to make profit. It's not about making sure that you use a lot of RDS, right? Now moving on to the real meat behind the potatoes, which is the product comparison in terms of the RDS monitoring solutions that we have available right there in the market. So please note that since I have handpicked only a few of them, it doesn't mean that the list is limited to this. I wanted to pick out the famous and the most used monitoring solutions and bring out a comparison accordingly. So as you would see, the different feature sets and the products are lined up in this comparison chart. Query analysis that I was mainly talking about, it's very important to do query analysis in terms of monitoring, because you need to understand how the queries have been performing over a period of time. You have to identify and analyze different logs and figure out what has been the situation of queries at a particular point in time. A few tools does good query analysis, and you can see it for yourself on the screen. The main thing that I wanted to bring out here is the RDS file-based log monitoring, because that is something which not many of the people do, and I can show you how it is of huge importance. Just moments after I go through the demo instance of Monyag. RDS OS monitoring is something that CloudWatch inherently offers, but there are a few tools in the industry which integrate CloudWatch with their monitoring tools, so as to make sure that you don't have to switch different tools basically to see OS metrics and the query analysis of the logs and all those stuff that as a DBA would attract you. Agentless is the blessing in disguise for some of the products in the market, because that's what really makes them powerful when monitoring RDS, because you cannot install any agent on the AWS cloud, right? So you have to have a good agentless tool to do the monitoring. Real-time monitoring is also a very famous feature that many DBAs look out for. CloudWatch has a bit of real-time monitoring, which we call it like a near real-time, which basically means that it shows you data with sort of a delay. So it's not actually real. You do not see what is happening in this particular moment. but there are a handful of other products which can do real-time monitoring. Alerting is widespread. It's the backbone of a monitoring tool, but I can tell you that some of the tools in the market are pretty aggressive on alerting. For example, if you would use CloudWatch and you would keep using it for a longer period of time and you do not have the DB expertise to understand which alerts you should get at what time, you would eventually end up having a ton of alert, and you would see alerts getting flashed at midnight, early mornings, all the time, and it becomes a lot more annoying. Which kind of becomes easy with PMM because it requires a custom setup. So you just you go through that pain to set up that alerting, but you make sure that you get appropriate amount of alerts. Replication monitoring is not something that everybody would be interested in because not many of them would have replications going on. But a nice to have feature when you have a replication in place. The real stuff that I wanted to bring out here is tracking the configuration changes. I mean, this has been a long-standing problem with developers over a long period of time, saying that okay, new people would come, new developers would come, they would change the configurations, they would tweak it, and eventually the server performance is going down, and they don't know what happened to the configurations. You have to go through a lot of entries to figure out what went wrong. One particular benefit that Vivid Cortex really trumps is the anomaly detection. That means if you have a failover, it have internal algorithms to figure out to give you a good solution, so that you always have high availability of your particular systems. Now, particularly moving on to the monitoring aspect of RDS using Monyog. So in the interest of the time, I would just quickly move on to the demo instance that I have set up for this particular session. So I would just quickly log on to this particular instance. I'm not going to give a complete walkthrough of the tool because that's a different session for a different topic on a different day, but I wanted to quickly show how Monyog does justice to RDS monitoring. So where I wanted to quickly jump over is the server section of Monyog, where you see that I have a couple of RDS instances registered for monitoring, and it gives me an option to look at the settings for this. And what you would find here is under advanced settings, you have the options to monitor MySQL query log and MySQL error log. And once you expand it, you see that we have this unique technology for using which, or rather say we use the REST APIs of RDS to pull the log from RDS and do file-based monitoring and do good analysis and display all the information at the right time or at the right interface, so that you don't have to go through a lot of black and white interfaces and figuring out how to make sense of the data that you are receiving. This is monitoring beyond raw logs, because this is where the technology enables you to be on top of the performance that you see. So you just have to give quick credentials and test the settings, and Monyog would start pulling all the log or the file-based log information and display it on all the interfaces. And I'll show you in a bit how those informations are getting displayed. Also, you can pull the MySQL error log using the same methodology. You just have to give the credentials, and it's that easy. Because if you do not have this, I'm pretty sure that you would go to RDS console, or you would try to integrate one of the Amazon RDS APIs or things like that to do this particular stuff. But we want you to concentrate on the things that you're working on and be successful in it, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel altogether. So once this setting is complete, I can quickly go to the query analysis and start some good query analysis for my RDS instance. For example, I can do slow query log analysis, general query, and sniffer is something which is very unique to Monyog. That defines how deep we go into MySQL hosted on Amazon RDS. With sniffer option, we are able to capture through show full process list, and we also make use of performance schema tables. That means you would not miss even a query which ran even for less than a second. Gives you a nice interface. Basically, this is nothing but you are able to see the information for the standard standard MySQL as well. It's not like something unique or different would come out as in terms of the display or the interface for hosted MySQL. We treat hosted MySQL and the standard MySQL in the same way, just that there is a layer of different technologies, but eventually we help you find the right information that is required for monitoring MySQL, and that's what makes a MySQL monitoring tool super complete. So you are able to see the top queries, see all the information like the way you see for standard MySQL. And what I wanted to show something which is pretty unique that you would have noticed in the product comparison chart that I displayed earlier. A lot of tools will give you an option to compare the configuration across your RDS instances, but how would you track the changes? I mean, that's a very good question, because most of the time you won't know who changed the settings, and a particular performance of a server is going down because of the reason that you still don't know. So I can select the RDS instance that I want to analyze the or track the configuration changes, and in one click, here you go. Like, I see all the variables that were changed at different timestamps. That for example, bin log format was changed at this particular date, and earlier it was it was old. Mixed was old, and our RW is the latest. So not a great example, but if there is something pretty critical that you want to monitor, in one click you can do it, which is very, very powerful, considering the amount of time that you would have spent without having such an interface. Real-time monitoring is something that many of the people would be familiar if they are monitoring MySQL, which is not hosted on the cloud. But as I said earlier, we can do as good monitoring for hosted MySQL, and I can show you right away. Like, I have a loaded session for RDS instance where you can see all the information was logged in real time. It wasn't like the information was captured with some delay or something like how it happens in CloudWatch. It's all real time, and you can see all the queries right there in real time. So if something was going wrong at 2 a.m., start up a real-time session, watch and glaze and find the problem, rather than trying to go through a lot of interfaces and a lot of logs and all the stuff. Save time, save money, and be successful in what you're doing. That's the thumb rule. So replication, there is nothing fancy about it. If you use a lot of replication, you would find it interesting. But let me not spend a lot of time here. What I can show you more is the ability to do customized dashboard for RDS as well. You can select a bunch of charts that you would like to select for your MySQL on RDS and do really, really good monitoring. So that's what sets apart Monarch from the competition. It's all about finding that problem SQL, okay, which you can find where you land in Monarch, like top 10 queries. It's very easy to figure out this problem SQL. So there are many aspects of Amazon RDS you can monitor with Monarch to be able to administer your databases proactively and calmly. Otherwise, you will be managing your databases by exceptions when a crisis hits, which is not a good practice. This will also lead to many problems. So please make it easier on yourself and do a better job administering your databases on Amazon RDS. Use Monarch. Thank you very much for your time, and back to our host Veer for any questions that we would have received.
Thanks, Sri. There were some questions that that I think you'll be happy to answer. Let's start with one. Daniel asks, can we get an overall critical health parameters of RDS instances in one place?
That's a great question. When you are looking to monitor overall critical configurations, for MySQL hosted on Amazon RDS. The monitors and advisors feature in Monio can be really handy. I think I just showed in the presentation. It makes use of simple queries like show global variables, show global status variables, and get all the variables value from your MySQL server. You can also set up alerts when the MySQL environment goes into a critical state, depending on the threshold value that you have set. So these are completely customizable as per specific needs and requirements, because everything that is there in Monio, including the 600 plus monitors and advisors we have, are completely customizable. And you can tweak it with the plain JavaScript, and it's very, very handy. So this way, you can monitor overall critical health parameters depending on what defines the criticality for your RDS instances.
That's great. Now, there's another question from Chris. Can we get OS metric monitoring for RDS instances?
Yes, and this has been a very popular request among our customers and users. Currently, we do not support OS metrics monitoring for RDS instances in Monio, but this is #1 in the roadmap, and you can expect it to be out in like 1 or 2 months. But if you would ask me personally, I believe that CloudWatch and Monio has good capabilities, and there is no competition. Both has to be used together, because a lot of other tools that you would have seen, which I displayed in the presentation, integrates CloudWatch with their interface, and they make sure that you receive the same thing that you would have received with CloudWatch, which basically doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because eventually you would have to have you have got to have a best of both the worlds, like do good query analysis, get a complete monitoring solution along with the OS metrics. So I think when we introduce RDS OS metrics in 1 to 2 months, our solution will be unbeatable in terms of RDS monitoring.
Thanks, Sri. I think there are some more questions, but in the essence of this time, we'll be taking them over email. And thank you guys for joining us. Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much for joining this session, and there would be a follow-up blog on this webinar so that you can make note of the important things. At the same time, happy to email me. My email would be published on the blog, so I'll be happy to interact with you for any questions that you have. Have a great day, guys. Goodbye.